Thank you everyone for attending our webinar today. I can see a lot of you signing in, and we invite you to pop into the chat, into the Q&A, and let us know where you're watching from. It's always exciting to see where around the world everyone is tuning in from. But we are excited to have you today to talk about total rewards and the employee recognition throughout the employee journey. There's a lot to cover here, but I first want to kind of introduce a little bit more of our speakers and hear from you a little bit more. So Madison, it's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Honored to be here. This awesome. Is so exciting.
Yeah, this is really great to have you. Could you tell us a little bit more about Chatbooks and your role and what you do there?
Yeah, so I'm the VP of People at Chatbooks, and Chatbooks our mission is to strengthen and connect families, and we do that through a family memory system where you can save photos and new memories and old memories, and it's collaborative reminiscing, and it's a wonderful way just to enjoy the photos that you have. We all have thousands of photos on our phones, right? Too many.
I don't do anything with them. They're just on my phone, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we've really created a really cool family memory system where you can print them, you can share them, and you can really enjoy those photos, not just a one and done, take a picture and move on.
That's really great. And how long have you been with Chatbooks?
I've been with Chatbooks for about 6 years now.
That's a lot of time.
It's a long time. Yeah. It's been fantastic. I've grown and been able to build a lot of really cool things, which has been really fun.
Yeah.
And I love the ever-evolving space of people operations. It consistently changes, and I think that's what's so fun about it.
Yeah.
What I was doing 5 years ago is not the same as what we're doing now.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah, and we'll talk about that for sure. But did the pandemic change a lot of what you were doing?
Absolutely.
Yes, as it did for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Well, we're so excited to have you. Thank you so much for being here. Malachi, introduce us a little bit more to what you do here at Awardco and your role here.
My usual answer for this is I don't know.
That's good.
But for the purpose of today, my job is really ensuring the success of our partners. So I work a lot with our digital mediums in order to facilitate how you use the platform, getting the most out of your platform. Really, I mix and drink the Kool-Aid. So I'm sharing, from the collective experience of all of our clients, what they're doing with their platforms, how they're accomplishing these big ticket items for us as a group, things like retention, employee engagement, things like that.
Yeah, and you've spoken to a lot of people about just the types of programs they're running and how they're achieving their success and employee recognition. It's really interesting.
Correct. Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of the job is working with our clients. So,
yeah, we're excited to have both of you here and to share in your expertise. Thank you for being here. So let's dive in. We're going to talk about total rewards and employee recognition throughout the employee journey. So just a kind of a question for you as you're thinking about this and as we're talking about this. What is the power of employee recognition? And we will touch lightly on this because I think it needs to be said and maybe doesn't need to be said. Everyone watching here, you probably understand the power of employee recognition. But let's just touch on it lightly. Madison, what do you think the power of employee recognition is as you've seen it in your career?
Yeah, I think when we take the time to recognize employees at different stages of the employee life cycle, it really gives them a deeper foundation into being a part of the organization.
Yeah.
It helps them feel that their work is seen. It helps them feel that what they're doing has a bigger meaning, and that at the end of the day, we just want to know, we're doing the right thing, we're showing up at work, is this what I was hired for?
Yeah.
But so often, I think when we don't recognize employees, we give them the wrong signal. We're telling them that it's not important when it really is, and we really value them. So making it a big deal to recognize employees, I think, is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you said that not recognizing people has such a huge impact, right?
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about you run marathons, right? Mm-hmm. Can you imagine if you ran a marathon and you got no recognition for it?
I only do it for that small medal. They just want that medal at the end. Doesn't matter how fast or slow.
Yeah.
No, it's so true. And being there to celebrate those wins with people that have been along that journey with you.
Yes.
It's so important.
Absolutely. And not that you should only do things for recognition, but there's a huge element of that is so important, right?
Right.
And it's important to realize that everybody needs that, especially from leaders, right? Leaders recognizing employees is really key. Malachi, as you've talked to a lot of our customers and clients and just people engaged in recognition, how have you found them to be able to more easily utilize manager recognition?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first thing that comes to mind is our managers feel a lot of the times removed, right? If you are a frontline manager and you have a direct team, you speak to them, and hopefully you are speaking to them. You're giving feedback, right? Recognition is a form of feedback. So you're doing that often. But if you go one level or two levels removed from that, right, as you move up that managerial line, you feel disconnected. And so when we talk to our clients, we're trying to create connection, of course, not just with that first level, but multiple levels above that. The way we're doing that is just making it public, right? Yeah. The people who are next to or close to you within line, like the frontline managers and their teams, they do see what you do and they recognize that. So spreading that ability for recognition across the organization is where the power comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we move on here, we want to ask you here, ask you, all of the viewers, what benefit of employee recognition is most important to you? We'll give you a little bit of time to answer this so we can see a result. But tell us what benefit of employee recognition is most important to you or to the people that you work with and to the people that you interface with on a daily basis. So recognition is important, it's key, it's important to realize that we need to do it, but why don't more people do recognition? And maybe when we talk about recognition, it can be a whole host of things, right? It can be a platform like Awardco where you do all of that, or it can be as simple as a thank you or a face-to-face thing. Why don't more people engage in recognition? Madison, what do you think?
So at Chatbooks, we have a structure put together to celebrate milestones. I think recognition in your day-to-day work is great, but along with this employee journey and supporting employees, we really want to support the full employee, the whole employee. We want to support these different life cycle moments of whether it's their 1 year, their 5-year anniversary, or they're welcoming a new little one into their home, they're grieving a loss of someone. We want to be there at all of these moments. So recognition at Chatbooks is not just something that is a gold star for something fantastic that was done, but it's more so acknowledging the whole employee and making sure that we're celebrating all of these different milestones.
Yeah, I really like that. I want to kind of ask a follow-up question. How can you get people who are leaders to understand that importance? Because I've heard, and maybe Malachi, you've heard this too, where leaders are talking about recognition and they say a job and a paycheck is enough of a recognition. I don't need to do more.
Interesting.
What would you say to that as a leader of people in your organization?
I definitely say it depends on the culture that the company's created. The Chatbooks, the culture we've created, is something where we really work as a team. I might reference coaches and players, and those are our managers and independent contributors.
Correct relationship. Yeah.
And we do that because just like any sports team, you're going to trade players. And when you reference a family or a company as a family, it's a lot harder to trade your grandpa. Grandpa's just always grandpa. But when you're all a team, you're working toward the same things, it's easier to celebrate these milestones. And as a coach, you're trying to there's so many aspects to it. But getting the coaches and these managers to buy into why they're celebrating these employees is to help with retention. And the biggest way to do that is to make sure that they understand the value of their team. If they're not in it day to day with them, then they're going to consistently be replacing people on their team because everyone's had it out. But when we can really spend the time to take care and really dig into, our players and our team members and celebrating them at all these different stages, we're able to have a better working team, and we're able to celebrate all of these moments, and that employee then feels that they can bring their whole self to work.
Yes, I love that. Bringing your whole self to work is, whenever I feel like I'm able to do that, I feel much more engaged.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's anything new to anybody, but you're able to be involved, you're able to be more engaged and more invested in all of those, business buzzwords. But it's true. And it's really important to realize that. So what is the benefit of employee recognition, or which benefit is most important to you? Here on the poll, 45% of you said it increases retention, which you just brought up, Madison, and it does. It increases productivity, which it does, actually. There's a study from Gallup that said that it can increase productivity anywhere from 14 to some say 25%. Now, that's a lot. If you could just get productivity up by 2%, amazing, right? And then 36 of you said that it increases employee engagement. And yes, it absolutely does do all of these things. So as we move on here, there's a little bit of we want to cover some of the stats. And lack of recognition is the number one reason professionals leave their jobs. That is really Impactful. I mean, that's huge, right?
Yeah.
Malachi, have you ever left a job? I'm going to put you on the spot here. Have you ever left a job because you didn't feel valued?
I'll tell you that I've wanted to leave a job because I didn't feel valued. If I was to step into more of a micro, like the old adage of step into the shoes of your employees, when I'm thinking about this, maybe even to relate to marathon running, right? When you have plenty of people on your path who are encouraging you to go forward, it's pretty easy to have that drive, to continue with that energy, right? You feed off of those around you. And when you feel isolated, especially as an individual, it's really easy to say, I'd rather not do this, because who's going to see me anyway? If I show myself out, nobody's going to miss me. Those narratives are the ones that play in our employees' minds. And if we don't do anything proactively to try and change that narrative, then it's easy. Attrition becomes a regular thing. Right?
Absolutely.
So in terms of wanting to leave, I think we just need to be more proactive in writing the narrative, right? That we do see you. We are a part of your journey and you a part of our journey. And we're cheering each other on the way.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a mutual relationship, right? Yeah, it's really key. Lola on the Q&A said that feeling valued and appreciated is a basic human need. I love that, Lola, because we've talked about that in a lot of our talk tracks at Awardco, is just that, yes, basic human needs, if you're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have the physiological needs, shelter, food, and all those kinds of things. But I think, and I feel strongly about this, and I know I'm biased, but I really think, like you said, Lola, feeling valued and appreciated is an absolute basic human need. You know, you have to feel like you are meaningful in a way.
Yeah, I think, you know, another part to that is seeing the value. You talked a lot about manager recognition, and I actually feel very deeply about peer recognition. I feel like so often our peers know what we're doing and they see us in the day-to-day of, you know, getting things done, whether it's crunch time or there was miscommunication or whatever it might be, but they get it done. And it's like needing that peer-to-peer recognition really is like the win the employee needs, because they're in the thick of it with those people. And I really feel like that, all levels are great, but I really feel like that peer recognition is something that hits the employee a little harder.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're doing the daily things with your peers, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily with your managers.
Yep.
I wanted to follow up on that. Feedback, especially from managers, right? It's framed in the outcomes that we're hoping for our employees. So when we do see the things that we recognize, it's based on the outcomes that we're measuring. Whereas my peer, right, knows that I stayed a little bit later to finish a project. My peer knows that I went out of my way to make a project easier for somebody else. And that recognition, like you said, is really important. Just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for those insights. This is really great. Love the discussion. We want to talk about a few trends of recognition now. Now, this data comes from Awardco's own data, as we have worked with our clients and we have determined what they're doing with their recognition programs. But we found some trends that we want to share with you. And then we're going to go into the employee journey and how recognition at every step of that journey can help you improve these trends or, you know, make them better for your organization. So the first trend is that recognition has peaks and valleys throughout the year. Recognition peaks during the holidays, which I don't think is any kind of secret, right? Lots of holiday programs. A lot of companies wait until the end of the year to do their service awards, things like that. But it falls off at the beginning of the year, and you can see that here in this graph. Recognition kind of starts to trend upwards towards the end of the year, and then it drops significantly. And this is 2 years of data right here, and we have even more than this that all support that. How can people avoid this trend? What do you think, Madison?
I think, to your point, leaning into that employee life cycle, being there at every moment. Something interesting just on the onboarding side of things that we recently started doing at Chatbooks is we've actually set up multiple different touch points with different people. We really want our team members to feel that they have someone that they can connect with on a people team. And we all have different ways that we connect with people and bond and, you know, really connect. So we have multiple different stages, whether it's 2 weeks, or 30, 60, or 90 days, and where you're meeting with someone different on the team. We all ask the same similar questions, but we're really wanting to make sure that the employee knows that we're a resource for them, and they now have a moment in time where they can then connect with us outside of that moment. And that's less of a recognition piece, but more of being very attentive to the employee journey and letting them know that we're part of that experience and like we're here to support them through the each thing that happens. And I think the same thing comes through. Recognition doesn't always have to be like a formal recognition, like you completed blank, so here's blank. But that's why I mentioned celebrating like those life moments and welcoming a new little one into the family. We may be biased because our mission is to strengthen and connect families, but
It's a good bias.
It is a good bias.
we love families and we love new little ones joining our teams. And so we really do a lot to support and celebrate that moment. And it's less of a monetary thing and more of a celebration for them.
Yeah. That actually brings up a question that Teresa has here on the Q&A. What are some ideas for recognition that don't involve money if you don't have a budget?
Yeah.
Yeah. What have you seen, Malachi?
Oh, I love this question. Budget, I think this might be a hot take, as they say, but recognition budget can get in the way of organic recognition, right? When I think I need to have a criteria for how many monetary units I should accompany this recognition, right? That can get in the way of making this recognition. I think if you build the foundation organically without monetary rewards, you actually start off on a better foot than potentially with monetary rewards. And I'd say the only difference between the two is intentionality, right? What are we trying to reward, right? When we talk about behavior, rewards beget more behavior of whatever that you just recognized, right? So, but recognition as itself, without it, right, I would start with a peer-to-peer program. I'd start with something very simple of, let's get my people recognizing the people around them. Don't give them criteria that says, oh, you have to do this or that. Just let them organically say, I love that you did this for me, thank you. Right? Or so impressed with this presentation, or love the way you think, right? I love collaborating with you. Whatever it is, allowing those things to come organically first builds a strong foundation. And then you can come in intentionally with potential monetary rewards that help to drive specific behaviors. That's maybe where the strategic outcomes conversation comes in, with macro level, right, down to your employees as a whole. What behaviors are we trying to drive? And then you think monetary that way.
Yeah, I love that. And that touches on something that I've heard a lot, is that what gets recognized gets repeated. And it doesn't have to be monetary. In fact, the science behind recognition and gratitude, and they're very similar, is that when someone recognizes another person, or when you receive recognition, there's neurotransmitters in your brain are the same, whether you give it or you receive it, and whether it's monetary or non-monetary. It actually doesn't matter if there's money attached to it. What matters is the intentionality. Like if you have someone give you a genuine recognition, that means more in many cases than if you were to give them a lot of money or something like that. It's really interesting.
Well, I'm going to double down on the idea of the narrative writing, right?
Okay.
We're all individuals, and we know that if nobody writes the narrative for us, our brain tends to fill it in, right? So if you take the employee journey, for example, and I'm a new hire and nobody has told me how I'm doing within the first 15, 30 days, I don't know. And so I start to fill in the blanks myself. If we can be intentional about touch points that allow them to know that, yes, we're messaging towards you, you're on the right path. You might not feel like you've accomplished anything grand in the first 30 days, but you're trending in the right direction that we'd hope. That's enough feedback for someone to say, great, I'll keep going. I'll keep moving. And if we can be like, this might feel in the weeds, but let's get intentional about helping craft the narrative that, yes, you're on the right direction. And if you're not, that's an opportunity for feedback. It's two sides of the same coin, and we shouldn't shy away from one or the other. Recognition shouldn't be too much. Feedback shouldn't be too much.
Couldn't agree more with that.
Let's do both.
That actually leads to another question here by Kimberly. How do you ensure recognition is consistent across your entire organization? How have you done that in Chatbooks?
It definitely is a tricky thing. I think certain departments feel that they appreciate or would receive recognition in different ways. Maybe some of our quieter team members don't want as much public recognition. So that's something we really want to take into account. We don't want to be like celebrating everyone if that's not the way they want to be celebrated. It's just a lose-lose. But then other team members really love that, in person, in front of everyone celebration. So finding a balance between that is definitely tricky. I think we have general tones to how we recognize major milestones and our general milestones. And then those individual moments where you're just like, that was incredible. Like the work that was done, that's a very individual situation. That's something that the coach and the player do together, the manager and the team member do together. And, that for them, I think is something unique and special, that coach knows them so personally and can celebrate them in the way that really speaks to them.
Yeah.
So while we have these overall processes of how to do things, we also have these individual one-offs that I think are really hit home to being something special for the employee.
I love that.
Would you say that training, and we touched on this a little bit, what's the importance of training in terms of keeping recognition consistent across an organization?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, because where my mind's going with that is that sometimes leaders have a difficult time finding the time to recognize, or they may not be fully bought into it. So therefore, recognition on their team might be inconsistent with someone on another team, because you might have a really powerful practitioner of recognition, and their team might be feeling it, and they're really cranking on recognition. Whereas another team, the leader might be just of a different type.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought. Kind of have me stumped here.
You can think about it for a little bit, and we'll come back to it, because we will circle back throughout the rest of this. We're going to kind of bounce through this a little bit. Just so a solution to have to this trend of, having those dips at the beginning of the year, is to have a recognition strategy, which is what you talked about, Madison. Making sure, like you mentioned, onboarding, that there's something there, and it doesn't necessarily have to be incredibly structured. Like you do this, you get recognized for this. A peer-to-peer program, like you mentioned, Malachi. But organizations with recognition programs have a 31% lower turnover. That's from a study from Deloitte just last year. That's a lot of reduction in turnover.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and the attrition is something I think everyone's always dealing with, right? You want to retain employees, you want to make sure they're happy and productive, and recognition is an oft overlooked solution to that.
Yeah.
So as we continue here, have that recognition strategy. The average recognitions per employee per year, this is Awardco's data, is one recognition.
I believe that.
You believe that? Have you seen that in some other?
Definitely believe that.
Yeah. And have you seen that, Malachi, in talking with people as well?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. And I don't think it's because that organizations don't want to recognize. I think it's just an afterthought.
I couldn't agree more. I think, especially as you're looking at the turnover rate, retention is such a big thing that we talk about when we're thinking of the business. How's the business performing? But when you get into the people world, and this is for all my HR folks, we so often talk about words. How can I explain a situation to you? Let me give you lots of words. Where in the business world, we speak in numbers, and we want to know how things are done in numbers. And so the more you can lean into numbers versus words is going to be huge for the HR teams. But as you're getting into the retention rate, you're seeing that creep up, you're thinking, who do I need to pay more? What do I need to do? Everything you're going to do to try to retain employees is going to cost money. When you're trying to replace employees, you are both losing and paying more to try to backfill their roles. So this strategy, this recognition strategy to preemptively celebrate and encourage and just award all of these employees that are doing a great job, they are great team members, is really important, because in the end it does save you so much money as a company.
Yeah, and the effort required to save all that money is, you get such a return if you put in a little bit of effort, right?
Exactly.
It's not going to completely eliminate attrition or things like that. People will leave, and that's okay. That's what's best for them and best for the organization, things like that. But if you could reduce it just a little bit, imagine the amount of money you could save, and that's what leaders will hear, right?
Yes.
Yeah, love that. Thank you. So average recognitions per employee per year, 1, and then average, Awardco average, so our clients generally see about 4.8, almost 5 recognitions a year, which is, and all that to say, if you can just do 2 recognitions a year, it doesn't have to be crazy. It can be, there are lots of options for that. Employee Recognition Day, there's a day at the beginning of March every year. Birthdays, service awards, a holiday, anything like that can help boost that return for you. And so like we talked about, birthdays, service anniversaries, holidays, all these kinds of things are ways you can do that. Now, there's an interesting question here that sort of relates to this I want to pose to you both. Malachi, we'll start with you. What are your views on a compliment sandwich? So an appreciation, feedback, and then appreciation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Earlier, I talked about the idea that recognition and feedback are 2 sides of the same coin. So if I'm going with that same analogy, there's no piece of bread on the other side or no Oreo cookie on the other side. It's one and the other. I think the biggest thing that I would call out here in terms of what might I do instead of a recognition challenge is making sure that both are frequent, right? If I increase the frequency of both recognition and feedback, then it's a pattern that my, let's say it's just a manager to peer relationship, right? Like they understand that I'm going to get feedback often. I worked at a previous organization, we had a culture of, they called it Feedback City. It was both good and constructive feedback on both sides, right? Recognition for the things you're doing well as those call outs very early, because we all had this idea of, I want to get better. Now, if you don't have that culture to begin with, how do you start? Well, I'd start on the carrot side rather than the stick side, right? But in any case, you need to give them together, right? And I think you'll probably see that, and this is anecdotal because I didn't do the research, right? But if I was to guess, the recognitions per employee per year and the feedback per employee per year are probably pretty similar. So if you increase one, naturally the other will increase as well.
Yeah.
It's like opening up for more of that candid conversation of, you're doing great, here's how you can improve, but less of having a moment in time where both of those things are happening at the same time.
Correct.
It's like, you're great, but like also like
Yes,
fix some of those
exactly.
things.
They need to be their own distinct events.
We love Radical Candor at Chatbooks. We've read the book as a company a handful of times now. We often reference it, but one thing specifically that I think we've recently done that has been really awesome is introducing more of, we don't really have very strict structure, so let's just call it like a recommendation. Some things to think about in a one-on-one. So when you're meeting with your players, here's a couple different conversations that you could have. You could have a performance conversation. And maybe that's a moment in time where we need to talk a little bit about better performance. It could be a moment where you're talking about continuing education, where like you've been doing so good, it feels like you're kind of growing out of this phase of your role. What's next for you? And so it's kind of that you're celebrating them in that moment. But you know, we've got a few different structures of what these one-on-ones could look like, and we really hope that gives a place and time for the employee and the manager to talk about these things, to have performance and recognition conversations, to talk about the day-to-day and to talk about personal, because again, it's all about bringing your whole self to work and being able to say, life is hard outside of work right now, and like I'm struggling here, but you know, I'm doing my best. It's like, oh, thanks for telling me. I'm so glad I can support you with that. But
I really like that. Everything you both have said, just to kind of tie it all together, perhaps it can be said that recognition streamlines feedback in a way, right? You give the recognition, so there's a relationship built there, and you're feeling more connected to each other. And then when feedback is given, then you feel like you can still trust that person, and that it's coming from a place of good intent, and then it makes it all better. But it does have to come, you know, in the same ratio. More recognition, more feedback is given too. It can make feedback easier to give for the person giving it too. Yeah, that's really great. Thank you for all those great thoughts. So just as a reminder, trend number 1 was that recognition drops at the beginning of every year. Trend number 2 from our data is that recognition is lacking from peers. The average organization has 2.28 manager to peer recognition programs. So managers are recognizing employees. There's a 1.88 high performance programs. So employee of the month, president's club, things like that. But significantly less peer-to-peer programs. This goes back to what you were saying, Madison, that peer-to-peer can be easy, it can be inexpensive, and it can be incredibly meaningful.
Yeah, one of the things we do at Chatbooks that I think is really fun, we have a moment where we do give everyone a monetary amount to recognize a peer. And there's a 2-week period, and there's a specific value that we recognize at that point. Doesn't have to be, you know, anything crazy, but just during those 2 weeks, what did you see for someone that was, you know, one of these values? And that has been such a cool thing, because it's also started to, you see a lot more cross-functional, which it's not just marketing to marketing, it's not people to people, it's, you know, our customer support team to our marketing team, or whatever it is. That really also brings everyone together, the value of our team, and really relying on the team's effort, and we're all doing the same thing together, which I love peer-to-peer. I'm going to say it again and again.
Yeah, big proponents of peer-to-peer here. And as you can see, 41% of professionals want more recognition from their immediate coworkers. And there's so much benefit to peer-to-peer recognition that you can capitalize on even without a formal program. If you just create a basic strategy and then start helping people recognize each other, it can be really impactful. So how can you do that? You can have meeting shout-outs. You can provide opportunities for peers to recognize if that's maybe an anonymous suggestion box or whatever it might be that is then, highlighted in a meeting of some kind. And you can make recognition more visible for teams, like you were saying, when teams start realizing that marketing might be recognizing people or client success and so forth. It can build those teams and build people up and make them want to participate more. And trend number 3, we're kind of going through this a little bit fast because we want to make sure that we get to the employee journey and the specifics of what you can do so you can have some takeaways from this webinar. But trend number 3 is that your mindset absolutely matters. So here you can see that changing the mindset makes behavioral changes 4 times more likely. We recently had a doctor of behavioral psychology come. He's worked with the Milwaukee Bucks and the Cleveland Cavaliers and helped them win championships. He's talking about neuroplasticity. And the basics of it is that your mindset can change the way your brain works. And your mindset can change everything about your life. That can be gratitude, that can be self-confidence, that can be your productivity at work, all these kinds of things. But changing that mindset makes behavioral changes 4 times more likely. So how do you change your employees' minds? We're obviously going to say recognition. But employee recognition changes minds and behavior. And I wonder if either of you have seen an example in your life where you've been recognized or you've seen someone else get recognized and has completely changed the situation or has helped you change the way you view something. It could be at work or not.
I think being on the people side, I get to see a lot of this. I see, situations where employees are disengaged, not working so much, and then have a moment where they are re-engaged. And I think that's a really, unique phase of this recognition. I'm going to lean into the recognition with feedback and praise because consistently talking about what's working, what's not working, and understanding where a player is at in their, current journey is really important. But continuing to celebrate, letting someone know, happy birthday, that really hits them. They're like, oh, it's one day of the year, and it really, birthdays are special. We love birthdays. Yeah. So, being able to celebrate, even just recognizing or calling out those moments, I think is important. But also showing that you care and giving that feedback, that you want them to have that growth, that you want to see them do better, shows that you care about them and they're not just, a member on the team that's about to get cut.
Yeah, it builds that connection, right?
Exactly.
I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm sorry about this, but what's Chatbook's mission? You said something, the word connection was in there, right?
Yes, our mission is to strengthen and connect families.
Yeah, and how do families connect? It's when you are expressing love and appreciation, which is another word for recognition. And so we're all aboard the recognition train, right? But we want to make sure, if there's nothing else you take away from this webinar today, take away this. What gets recognized gets repeated. If you would like to influence behavior in a positive way, you can recognize the behavior, and then it will automatically engender more of that behavior. And you're not trying to be manipulative. You're not trying to be, you're not trying to force anyone to do anything. But if you're genuine in your praise and you're genuine in your recognition and how you offer it and when you offer it, it can really change people's lives. And it can change your organization as a result. So employee recognition changes minds and behavior. Recognition and the positivity it provides boost productivity, engagement, and performance by 14%. This is also from Deloitte. And as you get these slides later, you will be able to see this link. And so you can take these to the people in your organization that may need to see those hard numbers. I think that if you took this number to any leader in your organization and said, we could get a 14% boost in productivity, engagement, and performance with a little bit of recognition. That might go over pretty well. So think about that. Now let's talk about recognition at every stage. And we're going to start with recruitment and onboarding. So we're going to kind of lump those together, recruitment and onboarding. But Madison, I want to go back to what you said earlier about how Chatbooks has an onboarding program. Could you talk a little bit more about that and the specifics behind it, maybe the cadence and what you do for that?
Yeah, so even including the early stages of recruiting and talking with people in our pipeline, we care so deeply about the impact we have on those people that are raising their hand to join our team and want to be a part of it. So we make sure that we, recognize and respond to everyone that applies for a job at Chatbooks. When we get into the recruiting stages, when we get into the past phone screens and further through the recruiting stages, we still make sure that there is a real connection for all of that, because we want to make sure that people are people. Like those people are invested in wanting to join our team. We want to make sure that they feel cared for, even if it's not a fit right now, it could be a fit in the future. So we never want to burn any bridges.
Yeah.
Bringing them, we've even done things where we've done paid a monetary amount to people that have made it to final stages and have spent a lot of time with us.
Wow, really?
Because
That's beautiful.
When they're doing different analytics projects, when they're doing these different challenges, it's a lot of time on their hands. And if it didn't work out in the end, we still want them to know we are grateful that they considered our team, and we really want them to, maybe there'd be an opportunity in the future. We never know. So we really want to keep that a really good relationship. But getting into the onboarding, we want nothing but confetti and all the celebration when they start. It's such a big deal to have a new team member join the team. And those first 30 days, those first 60 days, feeling like you have a connection at the company and feeling like they were ready for me, they were needing me, I am here for a purpose, is so important. A couple different things that we do. We have we assign someone a buddy. It is totally random. But we want them to have a cross-functional person to connect with.
So totally random, not maybe in the same department?
Not
even.
at all.
Oh, okay.
We do not want them in the same department because they'll see them in meetings and different things like that. We want it totally different. And this person gets a Zoom lunch with them because we are a remote team, and just chit-chats with them. They're just a pal at work. And you also have someone that's not like your boss or like HR that you can ask questions to. Yes, back to peers. And then, like I mentioned, we have our touch points with our people team, where we go through everything one-on-one, very individual with our team member to make sure that they feel they have someone to connect with. But it really comes back to that connection piece. We want to make sure our team members feel that they are joining a team that cares about them and that this is a place for them, and they're excited about that. To join the team. I
love what you said about how I can't imagine the impact of if you are having someone that's applying for a job, they spend a lot of time, and then Chatbook's like, sorry, we're moving forward with a different candidate, but here is a thank you, monetary or however you were doing that. I can't imagine the impact that would have on referrals. Right?
It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
I'm telling you, our pipeline is so good when the folks that we have in, but also the folks that we already know. It's the same thing as we talk through this journey. Once you get to the end of the employee journey, that's something we still really hold value to.
Yes.
We have an alumni program. We go through and our alumni programs still get Chatbooks perks, and it's we want them to know it ended then, but they're going to go off and get new experiences and get new skills. And we would love to bring them back.
That's amazing.
We would. That is the easiest hire. They know the culture. They know everything. And to plug them back in a few years later is probably a sweet spot for us.
It's almost like you're sending them out for professional development, and if they decide to come back, they're better than before, but they know everything about Chatbooks.
Yes, exactly.
That's really impressive.
They're like an improved version of themselves.
That's great. So we're having a poll go through right now, so if you haven't answered yet, hop in and answer this. How do you recognize during recruitment, and think about that during onboarding as well? Do you congratulate them on finishing onboarding training? Do you have a set strategy? How do you do that? So let's look at the results here. The highest is that 36% thank people for coming in for an interview during recruitment, which is key. That's absolutely crucial. I mean, how often do we hear of people that get ghosted, that they apply for something and they never hear back? A simple thank you from the organization can be really huge. So congratulations to you who are doing that. Then other responses, as you can see here, 26% personalize their recruitment process in some way, somewhat like Chatbooks does. That's really impressive. And we've also been talking about onboarding and Chatbooks, your onboarding program and how you're doing that. And it can lead to a high sense of belonging, which we've touched on lightly. But I wonder, Malachi, if you can speak to this a little bit, a sense of belonging, whether in your own your own work, or if you've seen that in some of the clients you've worked with. That's how that sense of belonging is created with a proper strategy.
I think what comes to mind is that I would love to be 100% altruistic all the time, but I'm human and I'm not perfect. And so this is where I would rely on a little bit of technology to help automate some touch points, right?
Yeah.
As new individuals come into my org, if I'm directly managing those people, of course, I'm 100% bought into their success. But if I'm a little bit removed, how am I adding or contributing, right? This is part of that strategy that we're talking about. So having specific touch points, maybe it's the first week, maybe it's 3 months, 6 months, or sorry, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, right? If I've got a plan and I came in with a 30, 60, 90-day plan on how I wanted to rock this job, then of course I would like some feedback at all of those stages, right? It doesn't have to be perfect because we're automating this specifically, but it's, hey, we recognize that you've been here for 60 days and we're already starting to see contributions from you. We're really grateful that you joined the bus and you are the right person to be on this bus, and we're just ecstatic about you being here, right? Then as those automated things go out, they can also cue the organic, right? So, oh, the platform just said, hey, 60 days. It is 60 days. Welcome. And I, from a different department, have seen what you've done. So, yeah, I'm encouraging kind of that ripple effect where you put one in that's automated, and as it ripples out, everybody starts to catch on and say, oh, yeah, that's right. Like just yesterday, I looked at our platform and I saw that it was someone's birthday. And I don't work with this person almost at all. But I actually caught them coming in the door and said, hey, happy birthday. And you could tell on her face that she was like, how did you know? That's a win, right? If you can create those types of touch points just because you do lean on a little bit of software here and there to help you, then you should, right? That's only something that's going to increase this recognition.
Can augment your abilities, right?
I love that.
Because the time savings is huge as well. Like, managers don't have time a lot of the time, right? And peers may not have time, but just that little touch point is huge and can lead to the sense of belonging. With some of these stats here, 56% increase in job performance. That's wild.
Unreal.
These are all from Deloitte, by the way. 50% drop in turnover risk, 75% reduction in sick days if they feel like they belong. That is just, I don't think these can be overstated. It's really impactful. So, what are you doing now to increase a sense of belonging in your new hires? Got another poll here. How do you invite them all to ERGs? Do you identify ways to increase your focus on DEI? Do you introduce new hires to the company in a company meeting? How can you increase that sense of belonging? We've talked a lot about the recognition and the automation. Are there other ways that you can increase a sense of belonging for new hires?
At Chatbox, we have a few different ways of getting people involved. We have clubs.
Okay, yeah.
A club could be something like a running club. It could also be a puzzle club or a cookbook club. And they're things that can be done in person or remote, and can also connect you with different individuals at the company that have a similar interest.
Yeah.
That's a really fun thing. We also do have new individuals introduce themselves in town hall. And
do you ask them if they're comfortable with it before? Or you just
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. We're like, hey, we're introduce you in town hall, and they're like, okay, I don't want to say anything, but please introduce me.
Okay, that's
it's
great.
Like great.
Yeah.
But sometimes we get like some good jokes, or we get a funny story about where their past experiences. But it again creates that moment for connection, and people will remember certain things about them and be able to connect at other times. We're like, oh, hey, you like graphic design, so do I. And
clubs. That's really good. I remember I joined a tennis club one time, and I don't play tennis. And I didn't go to one event of the tennis club. This is at my previous employer. But everybody else on the tennis club knew I was part of it, and they were super friendly. So I was like having a built-in group, and I didn't even play tennis.
I love it.
It was great. Yeah,
it's great.
Worked really well. So let's see what some of you here responded. What are you doing now to increase a sense of belonging in new hires? By an overwhelming majority, you introduce new hires to the company. That's great. I mean, that's one of the most simple and straightforward things you can do, but it can help other people get to know them, like you were saying, and can engender that sense of belonging. Like, I belong here. I belong to these people, and they appreciate me and for who I am and things like that. It's really, really great. So the employee journey continues. We've talked about recognition through retention and onboarding and kind of increasing that sense of belonging. Now let's talk about professional development. How is that part of the employee journey, and how can you facilitate that through an employee's growth?
I feel like at Chatbooks, what we do is allow the employee to choose their own adventure. So we give them different resources, but even if you're in the same space, you might not be interested in learning the same things. So 2 people on the people team might be interested in different aspects of the people team. So instead of giving them a coursework or something that would get them from, stage 1 to stage 2, we want to give them the opportunity to choose what they want. Maybe they want to get into a different aspect of people. Maybe they're getting ready to branch into a different aspect of their career fully. So I think professional development at a choose your own adventure type of pace is really good for our team. But would you, different experience?
Well, I can't speak from the same pedestal you do in terms of people, because I work with a lot of our clients, but I don't get to have that immediate relationship in that specific way. But what I have seen our clients do specifically in terms of professional development is really think about in terms of recognition, right, and how recognition helps the specific point in the journey, is just giving them an actual path to walk, right? You spoke a little bit to this earlier in terms of let them know that we actually did need them and there is something we need them to accomplish that only they can do. Just giving a little bit of direction can go a long way, right? And then as you're hitting those, we can talk about an S curve, right? As you're getting to that top of the S curve, you can have an S curve in the first 30 days where you've done I know my tech stack, I know my role, I know what my responsibilities are, then what, right? It doesn't have to be career as in what interests you and where do we want to get you in the 30 year. It can just be, what about next week? What would you like to accomplish within the next 30 days or the next 90 days? And I think a lot of times as managers, I as a manager feel this way, but I have this relationship that I have stewardship over, of trying to help those who I manage to become more. And I often think too far down the road, where I can just reel it back in a little bit and say, okay, what would you like to accomplish in the next 30 days, maybe the next 6 months? That makes it more tangible and most often a little bit more accessible for employees.
That's very true. Even just hearing you say that, often I'm asked, what do you want with your, well, maybe not often, but I am asked sometimes, where do you want your career to be in 5 years, in 2 years? I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I would hope I would know, but generally I don't. So what do you want to accomplish in a week? That would be completely different.
Or what would be a win this year? To look back at the year, at the end of the year, what would be one win that you would be really proud of?
That's great.
I think about those employees who would respond to that and say, I don't know, you tell me. Right, which is where that defined plan comes in. At least something that's tangible for them, that they can say, yes, I delivered what was expected of me. And then maybe the next question follow-up is, what about the next year? Or what about the next 3 months?
Yeah, I love that.
Professional development is a key part of the employee journey, and maybe one that is either too rote or maybe a little bit overlooked, right? You sit down and you have a 360 review with an employee, and you're like, great, here's what you did last year. Where do you want to be in 2 or to 5? I've had many of those, and I don't know how to answer them. And then I promptly forget everything that we talked about in that meeting. And there are ways to avoid that. But professional development, 86% of professionals would change jobs if a new company offered them more opportunities for professional development. That's incredible. So if you can offer your employees that would help with that retention. You get more engagement and obviously the higher retention. This is from Harvard Business Review. So can you afford not to provide that professional development? I mean, look at these stats right here. It's 92% of employees are more likely to develop novel products and processes if they are given professional development opportunities. You're helping them learn, right?
Exactly.
And then that kind of reminds me of your really interesting professional development where you'll have an alumni group and they might come back, right? And they'll be like, then they are more developed and then they'll be able to contribute more. So can you afford not to provide professional development? Think about that and think about these benefits. And as we continue the last few stages, we want to make sure we leave time for Q&A. And we appreciate all of your Q&A here in the chat. So we're going to talk about engagement and then kind of the last part of the employee journey, which can be like that alumni and how do you do that right. I'm not sure that, I wonder what both of you think, if that's thought of at all in the employee journey or traditionally, kind of that offboarding.
I would say no traditionally.
I would agree. I would say I've probably heard of this in the last year. I just recently attended the Culture Builders Summit here in Utah. And that was one of those ideas that was brought up as well. And I thought, with those who I've managed in the past, I definitely have wanted to maintain a relationship, but not on the organizational side.
Exactly.
If the organization would facilitate that, how much stronger might that connection be? Especially if I'm looking for talents that they've acquired as they've been out and away and maybe coming back. And I think it's almost a default that if somebody leaves our organization, it's this, maybe there was a question of loyalty or something like that.
They get the cultural way
Yeah, and I often don't feel that that's the case, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you just go as an individual. I would hope that if I stepped away for my life's mission or to go and fulfill something that I wanted to, that I wouldn't be looked at that way. But perhaps there's a default there.
Yeah.
I think it also comes back to celebrating the excitement of accepting a new job. And I think like that also is a big part of the Chatbooks culture, where it's like, I mean, we're super bummed you're leaving, but like, man, what an exciting opportunity for you. Yeah. And I think that also really helps it, leave your personal contact information so if we can reach out to you, and it like opens the door for it to not be a closed door, quiet, leave in the night kind of situation, but more so something that's supported. Yeah,
supported, and you can just find much more, I don't know, it leaves both parties feeling great, right? And no matter what's best for either, however you say that, but like no matter what is best for each party, if you have a great process or something that can help them feel supported and you feel supported as the organization, it can pay dividends down the road.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up here, please put in your questions to the chat. We want to make sure that we answer those as we go over that. But we're wrapping up this conversation. The employee journey is all about engagement. From the first step to the last step, you can celebrate those milestones. You can recognize frequently in many different ways. You can encourage peer recognition, and if it's part of your budget and part of your strategy, you can offer those enticing rewards, whatever that might be in your organization. And it all leads to employee engagement. And engagement and recognition are tied so closely together, and it is an integral part of your organization's success. And it is a simple thing that will have a really large return that can really benefit you. So we have some questions here. Thank you for sending these in. We have one question. Do you have any stats or anecdotes on how many boomerang employees returned to their previous companies because of an employee engagement or the recognition they received? Have any returned to Chatbooks since you've been there yet? Yeah, really?
And it's been like the best, like, blast from the past. It's like your pal walks in the door and you're like, hey, you're back. I'm so glad.
Good to see you. Yeah.
I don't have any stats on it, but I do know that our alumni is the first group we think of when we're looking at hiring or backfilling any position. We think of like, hey, what are they doing? We usually keep general tabs on like our team members that have left of like, I think they've been there a few years, they might be ready, and we start having candid conversations with them. But we really try to keep them in mind as we think about, filling these positions or bringing them back. But I don't have any I'll get that.
Awardco's experienced the same thing where several employees have left and then they've come back. And it's always exciting to see them come back. I think that maybe there might be an element of, I don't think this is the case, but I could understand it if an employee was like, I'm coming back to something I left. It doesn't feel like growth, but it's never felt like that in Awardco. And it doesn't sound like that it's felt like that way in Chatbooks either. If you do it right, it sounds like Chatbooks is doing it right. Employees come back energized and they're thriving and they're ready to work and they have an immediate support system and they know how things work. It's very impactful. So I want to give you both an opportunity to have any final thoughts on engagement and recognition and your feelings on that as we wrap up this webinar. Malachi, we'll start with you.
Oh, goodness. If I was sitting on the other side of the camera, I would say, this is all well and good. What about global, across different cultures? How do we do recognition best? And I would, honestly, this is just my gut feeling, but I would say having a strategy is better than not having a strategy, right? Like when we get into the real weedy work of people ops, right? We need to go and do not just a general engagement survey, but with individual teams, maybe individual regions. How would you like to be recognized? What are the culture customs here? We have many partners that do global recognition across many borders, right? So go and do that work. And you'll find that as you do it, not only do you find a greater love for those who you're talking to, but you get more specifics and your strategy can grow and evolve over time. But do something today. If you already do something today, what's the 1% improvement? that we can do to gather maybe an engagement or touch point in this client journey that we've been talking about.
Love that. Thank you.
I totally agree with all of that. I'd say make it personal. We have managers and we have these coaches on our teams that are taking care of our individual players, and we need to trust them to take care of their team members and encourage them to celebrate those small moments as well as the big moments. And we do have the strategies in place for broader recognition, but it's the day-to-day that really matters for them.
Yeah.
So,
That's really great.
that.
Thank you both so much for your expertise. We really appreciate you being here. And we'll toss it back over to Connor and with Sherm. And thank you so much for attending, and we hope you had a great time. Thank you.